and we're going to get into it today, starting with our hot take question. Here it is. And if you have any opinions on this hot take question, please leave them in the comments of this video. The question is, should the group of five be in its own league and have its own playoff? Some facts for you, some straight-up facts for you. The group of five has 61 schools. The Power Four has 72, including the 2 teams that left the Pac-12 and the 3 independent schools. So they make up just under half of the entirety of the FBS. The only group of 5 team to ever make the 14 playoff was Cincinnati, and they lost. They didn't even score a touchdown against Alabama, and they probably, this is more of opinion, but they probably also would have gotten blasted by Michigan and Georgia as well. So, guys, is it really fair? Will these schools actually get a fair shot at the playoffs as we expand into 12 teams? Or should they have their own league and their own playoff? Joey, what do you think?
I mean, I think that in a sense it's a fair opinion to have. I think it would be kind of cool to see a playoff system in order to see who could make it to this 12-team playoff to face off against these, Power 4 schools. But, we haven't seen how the 12-team playoff is really going to work quite yet. We haven't seen it, period. And so until we see this first year, we're never really going to have a true opinion on it. I think right now we're good where we're at. But I think that, if this year, if a group of 5 team is in there and, it's clearly just not evenly matched, and there's another group of 5 team who should have been there, then we got to kind of evaluate and assess. Maybe there needs to be a different system to how we determine which group of 5 team really gets in there. But until we see how this 12-team playoff works, I don't think there's any way of us saying this is what we need to be doing, this is what we shouldn't be doing. We need at least 1 year to evaluate and assess.
So this was a difficult question, honestly, because I haven't thought much about it. I've just kind of assumed, hey, put the guys in there and give them a shot to hang with the big dogs. But then as Joey talked, I thought about Liberty and Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl last year. And Liberty was, I would consider to be one of the premier group of 5 schools last season. They had a great team. Coach Chadfield did really well. I mean, they really put a good program out in Lynchburg. And listen, they hung with Oregon for like one half of the game. And then from there, it kind of went awry. So I'm kind of with Joey on this one. I think that you give them a year, give them a shot, because all you've got to do is be 12th. If you're 13th, you're out of luck. But if all you've got to do is be 12th, you have a chance to hang with the big guys. But there again, you have to consider even the best FCS school like North Dakota State is going to probably get throttled by Bama, or, well, at least Saban's Bama, or Georgia, or, pre-COVID Clemson even. So it's like, what's the status of the lesser schools? And so it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited to see how it plays out. But we gotta give it at least 1 year, maybe 2, a trial run, and we'll see what happens. But I think it's going to be interesting.
I also want to say, group of 5 teams, you got it. Sorry, Mason, I know you're about to speak, but you got to acknowledge, like you said, Liberty. You have an App State team who has a history of beating Power 4 schools, and those Power 4 schools were teams who were contenders for the national championship at the time. You got Coastal Carolina, which I don't think they're going to be that great this year, but they have history of being good. And you also have a team like JMU. JMU being that team where they almost got gypped out of a bowl game, but they were a really good team in every sport, really. But you just gotta consider things like that.
So the big thing that I really wanted to point out from my stats that I mentioned earlier, the big one that really jumped out at me is that the Power 4 has 72 schools and the group of 5 has 61. So you're still talking about 72 schools versus 62, making the college football playoff. And most of that 72, they're going to beat up on these group of 5 schools, no matter who you are, And yes, App State, they have a history of going and beating Power 4 schools, but how many times has App State made the playoff? How many times has a group of 5 team made the playoff? So even with auto bid, and we're going to get into that in a second, one group of 5 school will definitely make the playoff, But what is the likelihood of one, more than one group of 5 team actually making the playoff, and two, a group of 5 team actually getting past the first round? I mean, you're talking about 11 of the other, most likely 11 of the other best Power 4 schools in the country, and you're telling me that one group of 5 schools is going to be able to get past one of them? I don't know. I think it would be cool, and I honestly think it would be good for the sport of college football to have the group of 5 in its own league. Now, would that cost more money, and would, they have to find more funding? Absolutely. But I think it would be cool because then you would have like another playoff system. Now, how many people watch the FCS playoffs? I mean, I watched a couple games last year maybe, but having the FBS in its own league and all these other schools, and then when we have conference realignment, if they want to pull up a school, if they get good enough, we've seen UCF and BYU became a non-independent and joined the Big 12. We see these schools come up and Houston and SMU, and now they're Power 4, and we could see that happen. But to me, I think that they should have their own league. I think that, we are giving it a trial run with the 12-team playoff, and we'll definitely have at least one group of 5 school. But are we really doing justice by the group of 5 schools, or are we just using them as like punching bags?
I feel like too, real quick, is like when it comes to group of 5 and Power 4, we got to remember that conferences aren't necessarily Power 4 and group of 5 when it comes to other sports. So having this separate system also affects the other sports, bringing in athletes, students that provide, the funding for different kinds of events like this, other events, sporting events and all. I mean, you got Coastal Carolina, who came close to making the playoffs. Granted, yes, it was 2020, so, some of us don't consider that year to be a very great year of college football, especially if you're not an Ohio State fan. And you've had plenty of teams make a push. I'm pretty sure App State that same year had made a push. BYU, even though they were independent at the time, they had made a push with Zach Wilson at quarterback, which nowadays seems crazy. But, there are teams that are good enough to make it. It's just a matter of, because they're in this group of 5 section, maybe they weren't given the opportunity. Now, the team that was given the opportunity kind of blew it. We can all admit that. Cincinnati blew it with their opportunity to show that group of 5 is there and that they can compete. But, there's different kinds of speculation. But again, I think we have to see this first year of the 12-team playoff. Then we can go and say, you know what, maybe we need to do this differently. I think it would be cool to have a separate playoff system, but I still think they should have an opportunity to play against the Power 4 because they're not FCS versus FBS. It's still FBS versus FBS. It's just a matter of smaller FBS versus bigger FBS.
That was going to be my next thought, is what you're going to do with that, Joey, is if it was a separate system per se, you're going to get into dividing FBS, right? FBS 1 versus FBS 2. And while it may prove to be necessary, you're essentially creating 3 levels of Division I college football. So, and with super conferences, that may end up being a whole other thing. So, but really interesting thought.
My last point, though, is just that I feel that there is a lack of representation for the group of 5 teams. And I just feel like we're going to pick next week who is going to be that one, at least one group of 5 team that each of us thinks is going to get into the playoffs because of the auto bid when we pick our conference championship winners for 2024 next week. However, I really just, my biggest issue with it is that I just feel like there's not representation. And like I was talking to one of my friends and I was telling him, even if Kirby Smart went to a school like Kennesaw State, they're not going to make a playoff ever. Like, this is not college football 25 dynasty. This is not NCAA college football. This is real life. You're not going to get recruits to come to Kennesaw State. Now, I mean, maybe if Kirby Smart went there, or even Nick Saban or Urban Meyer, whoever, but maybe they could, but it would take a long, long time. So my thing is that I'm just worried about the lack of representation of these smaller schools that probably will never get to the level of the Power 4.